Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Martin Buckland is a recruiter. He's a coach. He edits resumes. He presents presentations to MBA classes on how they should be thinking about their resumes and how they should be thinking about their careers, and does a lot of stuff. And he called me up and he said, "You know what? People are really worried. They're worried about what could happen to their jobs, to their careers, to layoffs, to unemployment, given what's going on economically with the threats of tariffs from the United States, and what that might mean for Canada, for jobs, for employment, etc." So I thought it would be really great to check in with someone who's really got his pulse set to what's going on in the job market. Martin Buckland, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me again.
My pleasure. And you really do have you're connected in with so many things because both recruiters call you as well as individuals that are worried about their jobs. So tell me, what are you hearing in the marketplace?
There is normally I can tell I have a good idea of the career shift because of how I'm connected globally with executive recruiters and other past clients and other people, career influencers. But this year, on the turn of the year, when people say, "Well, what do you think is going to happen in 2025?" And I could not give them an affirmative answer because, well, as we're starting to see now, there is a lot of trepidation amongst business leaders across the world, whether they're going to have to reduce their staffing, because what's the largest cost in their general ledger? It's people. And I'm already starting to see that. There's no clear path forward. I can't guarantee now that there's good hiring, whereas I could last year and the year before and the year before that.
So you were saying in the fall there were layoffs. Did those continue on through the fall and the winter?
No, they sort of drained off in the fall, but now they're starting to come back again. It's going to be interesting to see when the governments, the US government, the Canadian government, the UK government, and the European governments and other governments across the world start to report the figures for January. That's going to be a telltale sign on their unemployment figures. So that there's a lot of trepidation, and I'm seeing I actually had to take my phone off the hook because it was going so much. There's people don't manage their career, and then suddenly they think, "Oh, my career is in jeopardy now, so I ought to call somebody to have my resume or have my LinkedIn updated or whatever."
So you think that people are starting to worry about losing their jobs and are starting to reach out to people like yourself to get ready for a pending layoff or a pending recession or the need to hunt for a new job?
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, the indications are, you're well networked, I'm very well networked, and the indications are from, economists, chief economists I work with at the big banks are that, we are probably in for a recession, if not something worse. So now people are suddenly waking up that they should have managed their careers when in good times and had a up-to-date resume and up-to-date LinkedIn profile and keep up that networking, which is crucial because the bulk of the jobs across the world it doesn't matter what country you're in, are hidden. They're not advertised, and now they're starting to panic.
So this is interesting. I've heard a lot of people very concerned. I'm actually at a conference right now in the real estate shopping center business, and lots of concerns about what the tariffs threatened by Donald Trump might mean for the Canadian economy, for retail sales, for the general economy, etc. But everyone's sort of taking a wait and see attitude. They're not convinced that Donald Trump's going to carry through with the worst of his threats, and people are, not battening down the hatches one would before a recession, which is kind of strange to me because we actually, on a per capita basis, are in a recession based on the statistics. If it wasn't for immigration last year, we would have been in a recession. So on a per capita basis, we are in a recession, and immigration is going to be brought down fairly dramatically this year, and so therefore one would think that logically we should be in a technical recession. We're talking about housing that's collapsed. Condo sales have collapsed. Housing sales aren't there, and so therefore one would think that construction workers are going to be hard pressed to find work. Real estate agents have got to be challenged if housing sales are down to the lowest level since 1990. What's going on? People are. I would have thought people are on wait and see, and you're saying no, they're not wait and see. They're actually getting ready.
Well, my philosophy as a career management practitioner is you don't wait and see. It's the old-fashioned, the Boy Scouts motto: "Be prepared." And because you need to manage your career because that brings in the money, puts the food on the table, pays the mortgage, pays the rent for the lease for your car, and all sorts of other things. But people don't understand that philosophy, and now they're thinking, perhaps in February, March time when tariffs, maybe come in, my job could be in jeopardy. So I've been watching Martin on various social media, in particular LinkedIn, or I know of his name or whatever. And I now need to perhaps go in and start managing my career because I want to be, if I am laid off, I want to be back to work ASAP because people who do manage their careers, the statistics are, and they're very well grounded. If you manage your career, you can be promoted faster. You can earn more money. You can be happier at work, which is very, very, very important because you spend so many thousands of hours each year at work, and you can retire 5 years earlier. So there's good benefits to managing your career, but it's just a question of people manage their career, manage their finances. They go and see their financial advisor about this time of year and put money away for their retirement, but they don't go and see somebody to manage their career.
Well, let's come back to actually how you actually manage your career and who you could go see in a minute or two. But let's talk about the situation economically and the threat, if we could to start with.
Sure.
Is there a way that you suggest to people that they sort of keep their eyes open? Is it just taking a look at the front pages of the newspaper, or in your workplace? Can you get a sense of when you're on the chopping block or when layoffs are coming? Are there telltale signs?
Oh, yeah, very much so. But I mean, my philosophy is the day you land your job is the day to start your next job search. Now, that is pretty forward up front, but it's very true. So, yeah, I mean, what they talk about around the water cooler, some layoffs come as a complete surprise, and people say, "Oh, I never saw it coming." And I had a good report, annual appraisal 6 weeks ago, and my boss told me I was the best employee, and then suddenly things change. But I think there's a lot of talk around the water cooler because of what's happening globally. It's consuming the global news, not just here in Canada, but across the world, what's happening. And so they are now starting to really think, well, have I been networking while I'm gainfully employed? Have I built that target audience network rather than a 360 network? You need to be very targeted. So they're talking about it a lot. I think it's on the minds of a lot of people, and I think quite a few people are having sleepless nights over it.
It's interesting because as I mentioned, I'm at this real estate conference right now, and it was announced from the stage that there were something like 360 stores that closed last year in 2024, but already in the first month of 2025, we've had over 100. And just this week, it was interesting. So PV Mart, which is sort of like a hardware store, had announced 20 closures last week, and this week updated it to over 100 stores. And so retail sales are an indicator, and retail sales were down dramatically during 2024 until December. And in December they picked up dramatically, but the sense was it was because of the GST holiday that the federal government put in place. Lots of people criticized it, but it really helped retail sales, and retail sales spiked in December. And so it would appear that we're not buying as much. If we're not buying as much, stores are going to close. If stores are going to close, people are going to be out of work, and people aren't going to be buying the goods, and therefore factory workers are going to be out of good, and truck drivers are going to be out of work. It's going to be retail sales are a good leading indicator, are they not?
Yeah, they are very much so, and so is the automotive market. So the two are good barometers on what's happening. The automotive market, they are noticing they're very stagnant right now. I have a client who's a Canadian, but he owns five dealerships in the US, Chrysler dealerships, and one Ford dealership, and he said December. November, well, after the election, November and December were the busiest months he's ever had because people fear that 25% might go on a car.
It's going to be an interesting 2025. We're going to take a break for some message and come back in just 2 minutes with Martin Buckland of Elite Resumes. And we're going to talk a little bit about how one manages their career and what you actually do and who you reach out to and what you can do to be prepared. As Martin says, scouts have to be in anticipation of a potential recession, a potential tough employment time period. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Martin Buckland as my guest today, talking about what you got to do if you're at all worried about losing your job. And frankly, Martin says, even if you're not worried, you should be a little bit concerned and planning for your next career move. Martin Buckland is very experienced in recruiting and coaching and resume writing in preparing for career changes. He runs a coaching business. He goes and lectures to MBA students, executive MBA students, on their careers and what to do. And he wrote and then was on my radio show about Santa and what you'd have to do if you were recruited for a Santa. And I thought it was one of the best shows around Christmas time to actually think about what we would be looking for if we were looking for a Santa. So he's got a prolific mind in regards to resume writing and application submitting. Martin, you mentioned before the break that you got to be planning your career as soon as you get your last job. Tell me, how does one plan their career? What do you got to do? How do you go about it? Who do you call?
Well, you need to embrace as part of your overall life. You need to embrace executive or career management from day one. The moment you graduate out of high school, university, or whatever, the earlier you do it, the better it's going to be for you, because that can help with your promotions and your salary and retirement early and whatever. So you really need to. The crux of executive career management is networking. The bulk of the jobs, well, here in Canada, 80% of jobs aren't advertised. That scares a lot of people. They think 80% appear on LinkedIn. And when I tell them, they tell them that, I say, I hope you're sitting down, because this is the bad news. So you need to network while you're gainfully employed. You need to build relationships with key stakeholders like executive recruiters while you're gainfully employed, not when you're in panic mode and you think they're going to pick up that dialogue you had with them 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years earlier. That's not the way the world works. It's maintaining and nurturing those relationships is very, very important. And people
Do that though,
don't
Martin, because
understand.
my sense is that the majority of executive recruiters work for the clients. They don't work for the people. They work for the companies, and so therefore they really only want to talk to you when they've got a job that you might be a potential employee for. So
Oh
how
yeah,
do you?
that's right. Yeah, that's a really good question. So they do, you're right, they do work for their clients who pay handsomely for their services, but you need to get on their radar and you need to maintain that relationship. So what I tell my clients, once you build dialogue, rapport with an executive recruiter, then need to, every 6 months or so, you need to send them what I call a star story. So that's one of your accomplishment, performance driven stories, preferably with metrics in it, dollar value, percentiles, or pound value, or whatever. And you need to send them that to keep your your name on their radar. And if you update your resume, you can send your updated resume, which will then delete in their database your old resume. So they have that on file, and make sure you have all the keywords that are pertinent to you, your hard skills, your business, your functional, your skill, your level, industry, and sometimes geography specific buzzwords. And then when they're looking for talent in their database, you will be found and come up, and then hopefully that job you'll be put into the talent pool.
So keep relationships with executive recruiters up to date. Keep your resume up to date, and send them new resumes. And also follow up with every 6 months a update as to what you're doing, how you're doing, what your successes are in your career.
Yes, exactly. Because we're driven by performance. I mean, when I first started writing resumes 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, they were interested basically in responsibilities and maybe throw in a couple of accomplishments. Now it's reverse. They're interested in accomplishments, not your responsibilities. So you're a CFO. I know what a CFO does. I'm interested in you saving me money, making me money, streamlining operations, corporate governance. So the list just goes on at SOX, and the list goes on and on and on. So, yeah, you need to, it's relationship management. That's what it is. And having a target audience. So you don't network like this. You network within a bullseye. So you network within your own industry. You attend conferences. That's just like you are. You need to, because as you know, it is a great way to build your network within a defined audience. So don't just network with everybody and anybody. And that people sometimes use LinkedIn for that purpose. And that's not the way it is. You need to be very targeted, and, somebody who can influence your career maybe this year, maybe next year, or the year after.
It's interesting you talk about keeping people updated. You and I have spoken a few times, and I think we know each other reasonably well. You just said I was a CFO. I'm not a CFO. I'm a COO, so I got a promotion, and that was like 4 years ago. And yet, you've categorized me in one area, which I think is a problem that people do categorize people in specific areas, specific responsibilities, unless you update them. And so, just this interaction is a great example. So, 4 years ago, I got a job as a chief operating officer, and lots of people still think that I'm a CFO. How does one go out and make sure that the contacts that they want to know that they've got a new responsibility, a promotion, a new job title?
Oh, well, so LinkedIn is, of course, the core here. So the day you land your job, or the day you take that seat in your new appointment, you need to articulate that on LinkedIn. And then you need to focus on, your don't be like what I call inactive. You need to be proactive on LinkedIn. So there are three pillars on LinkedIn you need to address constantly when you're in career. I don't call it unemployed. I call it career transition. And then, so when you're in career transition and when you're gainfully employed, you need to create your own posts. So be ingenious and create posts. And then comment on other people's posts and share posts. And that's the way you get traction with LinkedIn. And that traction with LinkedIn then helps your Google ranking, your Google algorithms, and boosts you up LinkedIn. So that means you will have more traffic to your LinkedIn profile. So don't just be lazy and think, I've had clients. The classic example is I had one last year. He was docile, completely dormant on LinkedIn, and then he called me one day. Oh, Martin, I need my resume updated. And I said, you haven't been. And I said, well, why? And he said, I said, why do you need your resume updated? And he said, I've been laid off. I said, I could tell that because you haven't been on LinkedIn. And now suddenly, in the last 2 days, I've seen you on LinkedIn 3 times.
So it's the old adage about don't wait till you need the assistance and you need the job to start looking for a job. Keep looking all the time. Keep networking all the time.
Yeah, and I think you're a fierce networker. I'm a fierce networker, no holds barred. But I only network within that target audience globally, not out of that audience.
Okay, so we talk about LinkedIn, and you've given us three suggestions of posting, liking, and sharing. And so you make sure that the algorithm knows that you're around and that they magnify your posts. We've talked about updating your resume. What else? Going to conferences, is that you think a good idea?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you think yourself as a thought leader or a subject matter expert, there's not a better forum to market yourself than applying to speak either at a regional or chapter meeting of your organization, your industry organization, and of course, national or even international, because you've got an audience straight away as you're speaking to those, and people will remember you. Your name comes in the program. Plus, they can come up to you afterwards if you've got a really captivating topic to talk about, and that's the way you're going to really market yourself as a subject matter expert or thought leader.
I agree completely. I think speaking at a conference is spectacular. I do think though that there's other things you can do even if you're an attendee. I found that it's really helpful to think about who else is attending. Find out through the conference's attendee list who's attending, and send out some messages ahead of time to people that you would like to network with. Don't just plan on showing up and bumping into people. Tell them you're going to be there, and reach out to them and say, can we have a coffee? Can we stop for a drink? Can we catch up? So I think being proactive about the networking at a conference ends up being really helpful. And I also think that reaching out to a speaker or two that you'd like to connect up with is helpful, because those are the people that are going to be at the front of the room talking to six or seven people at the end of a meeting. Oh, Brian, you reached out to me. Good to see
Oh,
you. Meet some other people. So I think that that's critically important. And so I think that even if you're just an attendee, there are things you can do. What other suggestions, if any, do you have?
white papers. So you could write white papers, become an industry leader writing something on your particular topic. And there's lots of niches today that, you could become let's use AI as an example. The AI is a big window here, but you can subdivide AI or ML or blockchain or CSR or ECG. I mean, environmental, social, and governance is huge as well. So you could become an expert within a particular niche of that area, and then write white papers and get them published, and then become a leader in that way.
So you got updating resume, getting on LinkedIn, going networking. What other suggestions have you got to manage your career?
Well, I just network within your own industry. Don't be frightened of, even when you go, if you're a hockey dad or a hockey mum or whatever, there are those people in that hockey arena when you're sitting freezing your butt off. You might be able to open up a conversation, and they might be in the same industry or they might be able to generate leads. Or I can write a book on how people have networked, both at hockey arenas and just a social, family social and industry social events. And then there's a website called meetup.com, meetup.com, that has some questionable meetings and questionable people demographics there, but there are many business meetings like finance and like supply chain and whatever. And if there isn't one in your hometown, start one. Doesn't cost you any money, and you can then become another leader, seen as a leader by hosting a networking event. And you never know, you can invite executive recruiters to that meeting, and then you get your name higher on that executive recruiters list.
So a lot of the suggestions you've got have talked about just getting out there, putting your resume out there, putting your name out there on LinkedIn, getting out there to meet people, networking at conferences and things like that, and trade associations, etc. Doesn't sound like managing. How do you manage your career? Are there coaches that you can go to? Are there people that you can talk to? Like, how do you manage your career?
Yeah, so people don't know who they are. They don't know their value. And so that's where a coach like myself can uncover their value. They go for 7 or 8 years at one company and they're earning $180,000, whereas their equivalent at the competition is earning $220,000 for the same job, same roles and responsibilities. So you need to have it is beneficial to have a coach. I mean, I'm very biased, obviously, but it is helpful. You have your financial advisor who you pay to manage your finances. Why don't you have a career or an executive coach or a personal brand coach or a job search coach like I am?
Well, it'd be interesting to find out what you do. Maybe we'll take a break for some messages and come back and find out what you would actually do if you were an
Sure.
executive coach, because that might be kind of fun because a lot of people probably don't realize it. Martin, if people want to make use of your services as either reviewing the resume or as an executive coach, how can they best reach out to you?
Okay, so I have a website, aneliteresume.com. So www.anelite resume.com, aneliteresume.com. And then my email is martin@aneliteresume.com.
We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in 2 minutes with Martin Buckland of AneliteResumes.com talking about what an executive coach, what a person that could actually help you manage your career would actually do. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Martin Buckland, who runs a coaching business that helps people with job transitions, with looking for jobs, with resumes. He speaks to executive MBAs on their careers and their resumes and what to do. Reached out to me and said people are worried about the future employment situation, given the threat of Trump tariffs, the fact that we're potentially headed for recession. And we've heard this from governments that are thinking about, what they need to do to combat Trump's threatened tariffs and large fiscal spending, economic development projects in anticipation of a potential downturn in the employment levels and job losses and a recession. And so Martin says people are out looking for jobs and thinking about layoffs and worried about their careers. And so I thought it'd be helpful to reach out to him and find out. We've had a discussion about what one needs to do in regards to resumes, updating them, connecting with executive recruiters, managing your LinkedIn, getting out and networking, etc. And one of his suggestions was you got to manage your career. And it's helpful to talk to an executive coach or a career coach to talk about what you'd actually do. So, Martin, if I came to you and said, please help me manage my career, what would you do? How would we talk about it?
Well, it's communication. I use I'm lucky. I have an advantage over many of my peers who are coaches as well, in that I'm a trained police officer. So I was trained in interview techniques. So I use those interview techniques without putting people in handcuffs. That's an extra fee. But I uncover. We have a dialogue, and I dig deep because I need to know what that person, who they are, before we actually go into preparing a career plan. Because people have no idea on who they are, what they can bring, their benefits, their skills, what is their differentiator, what is their personal brand. That's their unique promise of value, their differentiator. They're competitive. You put a group of accountants together and they all think they are bean counters. Well, they're not. Everyone has everyone in that room has a differentiator. So
You think
you need to
people
understand.
you think people have a personal brand?
Oh, people should. Everybody has a brand, yeah, and they need to uncover that, and they need to articulate that both verbally, and they need to articulate that on their LinkedIn profile, and they need to articulate it on their resume. It has to
How,
be in 15, 17, or 19 words on their resume. Don't go
how
to
do you
18. Don't go to 20.
how do you uncover your personal brand?
Well, that's who you are. What is your differentiator? If you were at a business meeting and you left that business meeting to take a cell phone call or something, what would your peers remaining at that business meeting say about you personal wise when you leave the room?
And why do you say it's got to be in 15 or 17 or 19 words?
Because psychologists tell us that the human mind, our mind, picks up on 15, 17, or 19 words faster than any other combination.
Really? That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Any idea
Yeah.
why?
No, that's just the way, I guess, psychology attached to messaging, marketing messaging, has evolved that way. So and so now resumes aren't read initially by human eyes; they're read by scanning machinery. It's called ATS. So you have to be spot on. You can't go for that 18 word personal brand on your resume. You have to have 15, 17, or 19, because the programmers for that ATS, that applicant tracking system, that computer system, have now programmed their computer into 15, 17, or 19 words.
Fascinating. Okay. So we got to figure out what our personal brand is, and we got to distill it down to 15, 17, or 19 words. We got to put it on the top of our resume. We've got to elucidate it on LinkedIn and other places. What else? What next?
Well,
What
you
else
have
would you
to
talk about?
we have to be bold, and no, people don't are frightened of talking about themselves and articulating their performance. You will be hired for your next job as a COO, because you make money, you save money, you streamline operations, you eliminate headcount, you introduce new systems and processes, just the same as anybody else. So the world has become, well, we live next door to the most bombastic nation in the world, and now it's spread. I've noticed it spread in the last 30 years across the world, and you're going to be hard because your performance, not because of your responsibilities. So you need to learn to sell yourself. People can't sell themselves. So a supply chain, well, you're in operations. You're an operations guy. You're really good at what you do. But now, when you go into career transition or looking for a new job, you need to become a salesperson, and you need to sell who you are.
And so if you're an executive coach and I came to you and asked for some advice, how would you guide me to sell myself?
Well, first of all, you need the fundamentals, which are of course, the resume and the LinkedIn, which I do both. So I write both, and then I get to know my clients, and then we embark on a coaching arrangement, and then we dig deep. And because I now know what your value is and who you are and your accomplishments and your personal brand and all sorts of other, your hard skills, your soft skills. And then we go into a coaching arrangement, and we then develop a strategy for a career plan.
People often say they're too young, or they're too old, or they're too inexperienced, or they don't have Canadian experience, or people have always got reasons why they won't be successful. What do you do with people like that?
Oh, I could write a book on excuses. Yeah. So I mean, there is ageism. Let's face it. There is discrimination, but it's not just discrimination because of age. Sadly, it's because of color or religion or politics or whatever. But you need to conquer that, and you need to. If you're 64, you can still. I've got clients. Last year, I had several clients in their 60s get themselves into multiple 4 or 5 job offers. But what they did, they eliminated that hindrance in their mind to say, "Oh, I'm too old. I'm over the hill," and they then concentrated and focused on the attributes and the skills and the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge they can bring ABC company or XYZ company over even a 40-year-old or a 45-year-old.
You counsel, at least you have in the past, executive MBAs. Do you think going mid-career back to school and getting an executive MBA or some other kind of certification or diploma or degree is a smart thing to do, to take a break from your career and get more education?
Well, an EMBA is a bit different from an MBA. So, an executive MBA, you have to work, or generally that's part of the arrangement with the university when you apply and the admissions team. You have to work while you're taking that EMBA, executive MBA, and it's a different. Normally, it's a different curriculum. It's aimed at a different demographic, the more mature. And you learn more leadership, more management skills. And what is interesting is that for the first time ever, I'm seeing in London, UK, executive recruiters who I work with, who I've educated on the benefits of an EMBA now in their job adverts say only EMBAs can apply. So we have some great schools here in Canada, EMBA schools, and it is an investment. And it's a time investment as well as a financial investment. But I can tell you that the ROI can be massive. I've got clients from the big US EMBA programs, which are 220 US, get their money back in 26 months.
Really, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Some people think you've got to stay sort of in one functional area or one industry sector their whole career. I've been in strategy, I've been in corporate development, I've been in finance, and I've been in operations, and I've been in the United States, both coasts, and Canada, both coasts. Which is the right strategy? Stay, one career track in one geography and in one job function in one industry sector, or bounce around, or is bouncing around bad?
Bouncing around is you're an exception to the rule, but today you're only going to when if things get if recruitment starts to plummet, then you have to focus on you can't transition functions. You may not even get a promotion. You have to function on your skill set and stay within your particular function. Don't go to another function. But an executive MBA actually helps you transition to another function. It has two benefits. Either you can do a transitional change, or you can rapidly go up the promotion ladder. But you're an exception to the rule. You can change functions, but I think if what we've been talking about earlier on in the first section is going to come to fruition, then you need to stay in your own function right now, and you need to hunker down and see what's going to happen in the next 4 years.
So if someone hired you as a career coach to talk about managing my career, you'd work on figuring out what our personal brand is, my personal brand is. You'd ensure that I've got the right competencies and education. And it sounds like you'd be guiding some people to an executive MBA, particularly if they wanted to change functional areas of responsibility. What else would you do? What else would you help us with?
Well, not just concentrate on the EMBA, but continuous education. If you haven't got continuous education, that's a red flag. When you want to eliminate all the red flags and have green flags when you go into the hiring mode, a job search mode. So not having any education. So today it's a lot easier after COVID. A lot of the universities and colleges diverted their in-person courses to online. So if you were my client and you wanted to take continuous education, you didn't want to take a full degree or diploma, I would suggest that you do a 6 week or 8 week course at Said Business School, so the University of Oxford, or the Judge Business School. So you get University of Oxford and or Cambridge or London Business School on your CV, and that makes you stand out from the rest because that's a good topic of conversation in the interview. So you can take a course, you can take a diploma, you can take a certification, you can take a designation, you can take a degree. There's many things to do with continuous education, but that's a red flag if you haven't got any education in the last 4 or 5 years. And so is staying in the same company for 5 or 6 years. That's now seen as a red flag. You should move around companies every 4 to 6 years now. If you've been in a company for 10 years, that can be in good hiring days. And even more now, if it gets to bad hiring days, can be seen as a real negative. You need to move around. Whereas in my father's generation, it was okay for him to stay in one company from the day he graduated out of university to the day he retired, but not now.
The line that someone told me was "Eagles soar and turkeys squat," and I thought that was sort of telling in regards to that movement that you're suggesting. What about if you don't do the things that you're telling to do and you end up getting laid off? Lots of people, don't plan their careers and don't prepare for that situation. And if what you're worried about comes true, I think there's going to be a lot of us in the situation in the next 6 to 9 months that we're out of work, and lots of people are very embarrassed about being laid off,
Sure.
being embarrassed about being out of work. How do you tell people to deal with that kind of situation, and how do you deal with it on your resume, and how do you deal with it in interviews?
There's nothing shameful about being laid off. You first of all, if you're laid off, you need to deal with that emotion, the anger, the rage, which is only normal human emotion. You need to deal because nobody's going to hire somebody who's raged, who's angry or whatever. You need to deal with that. Go and discuss it with your friends, or maybe see a psychologist or something. And then once you've dealt with that, then you need to build your resume, have your LinkedIn profile, and you need to be very proactive in a job search. So a job search, don't sit on your couch and think a job is going to come to you. It doesn't. You need to be proactive, and you need to treat a job search as a full-time job. The more effort you put into it, the more rewards will come your way.
A job search is a full-time job, but I've told people often that it's easier to get a job when you've got a job. And so if it's a full-time job, but you're worried that you may lose your job, you may get laid off, or you just think it's the time to be thinking about a transition, managing your career the way that you're suggesting. How do you go about actually doing it while you've still got a full-time job?
Well, that's tough because a lot of people have got family commitments as well as other commitments outside their extracurricular activities, etc. But you need to spend time managing your career, as I say earlier on, when you're gainfully employed, not just when you're in a career transition. And how you show a layoff on a resume, it's perfectly simple. You just say you say just laid off due to economic conditions. Be open, be honest. And if you've got a gap in your career, like a lot of people have got gaps, this is something that gets the hair on the back of my neck up. They leave there's a question mark. So they were working between 2020 and 2023. And now we're 2 years out of 2023, and they've got that gap, but they don't explain that gap. Why they were between 2023 and today. There could be reasons. They've taken an academic sabbatical, they've taken a personal sabbatical, they've taken a travel sabbatical, they've been a caregiver to elderly parents, or to a spouse, or to children, or a state that they've had state they've been dealing with an estate in the family, which can be a full-time gig in itself.
I went to an interesting presentation by a guy who said, plan out what you're going to do if you lose your job, or you get divorced, or something traumatic happens, because dealing with all that negative emotion is difficult. And he said, think about taking a sabbatical. Think about plan ahead. Your trek through the Camino de Santiago, or your trip through Australia, New Zealand, or taking that course in yoga, or business school, or whatever it is that you wanted to do, and make sure that you use that time that you're not working, which is precious, because when you think about it later on, the times that you can take, a couple months off in your career are very few, and so think about it as a precious opportunity rather than as a big problem. Other people have said, well, no, if you take that time and it stretches out too long, you sort of get out of the flow, and it's difficult to get back into the flow. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think we're more acceptable today for people taking sabbaticals of any shape or form to recharge. That's what people want. They want a charged warrior to come in and take over their job, their roles and responsibilities. Really, and you might not be in that mood, so you've taken a break and you've gone on a hike, or you've done the Campiano, or as you mentioned, or something else, or just learn something else. Taking a break is as long as you're honest. Don't leave a gap where there's a lot of doubt, because that's a red flag again. And you want to be honest. It's perfectly acceptable to take a break today.
Martin, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it. please, if people want to contact you, how do they best contact you?
Yeah, sure. So I have this book on my website. So look after number one, and that's talking about career management and recession proofing your career. So people can download that. So Martin at aneliteresume.com, ANELITE resume.com. Plus my website is www.aneliteresume.com, aneliteresume.com.
Martin Buckland, I really appreciate you joining us and giving us some cautionary advice about what to do in managing a career, particularly as we're potentially headed into some economic headwinds. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm going to take a break and come back, and I'm going to end the show with a tribute to a gentleman who passed away 2 weeks ago, who I think is one of the best networkers I've ever met, Peter Cool. Back in 2 minutes about Peter Cool. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.